The following is a message from the Liberal Democratic Party of Japan. Would you like to help build a stronger, brighter future for the Japan of tomorrow? Then don't forget to make a real difference by taking the time to cast your vote in your local election, and also by maybe having a bunch of babies. Even just 8 or 9 babies would go a long way. This has been a message from the Liberal Democratic Party of Japan. Welcome back to Japan by River Cruise. I'm Bobby Judo.
And I'm Ollie Horn.
Today we're also going to be joined by Sophie Hardison, author of the Hatena blog Sophie Hardison and current resident of Hiroshima, where she acts as the Inspector General of the Sanzunokawa River Crossing Certification Authority. Hi Sophie, thanks for being here.
Hi, thank you for inviting me.
Our pleasure. So on today's show, the South Korean film Parasite sweeps the Oscars, and people are wondering whether or not South Korea has overtaken Japan in terms of cultural soft power. We'll dive into what I feel pretty comfortable calling the most contentious and most consequential Japan-Korea dispute of all time. Also, Ollie's got your river cruise recommendation. Yeah, Ollie?
Yes, this week I'm going to be recommending all of our listeners to download the new Foreign Traveler River Cruise Welcome to Japan exclusive discount app. Based on the success and ease of the JR Rail Pass, where all you have to do is submit your passport and payment details in your home country, then go and collect a voucher and exchange that voucher for a stamp and take that stamp to a counter in order to get your discount card. Here, all travelers have to do is to download an app simply from only the Japanese App Store for now, requiring you to register using a Japanese cell phone number and a Japanese email address, which will unlock a series of discounts for a number of river cruises across the country, plus gives you a 50 yen discount in any participating pharmacy, providing you speak Japanese.
Along the same lines, a line of luxury river cruises modeled after JR's luxury train experiences, with Michelin chef curated dining, upper deck cabin suites, and prices starting at 25 won a night. We're going to start a hard-hitting, in-depth expose into how these types of elitist enterprises are destroying traditional Japanese river cruise culture, and we won't stop until we get some complimentary passes. But first, soap talk.
Bobby Judo, how's your week been?
Nothing going on. You know, you would think having a viral tweet that was viewed over 2.5 million times actually has no bearing on life whatsoever.
That's weird. I would have thought you'd be a rich man now.
Our guest today, Sophie, has viral tweet experience, right, Sophie?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, you got quoted in the New York Times for something.
Oh, that's like a while ago, like a few years ago.
For the sake of the listeners, Sophie is mixed race, Japanese and American, and so she's using her modest side to say, oh, that was a while ago. Sophie, trust me, if I had a New York Times credit, even if that was when I was 6 months old, I would still be milking that. That would be on the top of every poster I use.
I tend to tweet my opinions in Japanese, but I tend to try as hard as I can to be polite about it so as not to offend any Japanese followers. But that's a very different vibe from what you do, which I think can seem like very refreshing.
I think someone needs to, use strong words sometimes.
Which one of your tweets do you think has had the most surprising reaction for you?
I mean, the New York Times one, I didn't even think about that, oh, someone's just gonna put my tweet on New York Times. That was crazy.
Can you remind us what that one was about?
It was when the tennis player, Naomi Osaka, she won a match or something. I really don't know anything about tennis. I'm really sorry. But yeah, anyways.
That's interesting, because if you want to hear about tennis, you can listen to our 4th podcast, which is tennis. What? There's a tennis match going on. Yeah, let's listen to the tennis.
Let's get to that tennis match right away. .com is where you can find it.
That's our other podcast.
Yeah, so some Japanese people are like, oh, Naomi Osaka, we are proud of her because she's Japanese, blah, blah, blah. But then till she won the match, everyone was like, she's gaijin, she's not Japanese. She can't even speak in Japanese. And then they just flipped their hands. And then I was kind of mad about that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
as soon as there's something that you can hold up and say, this is a positive for our country, then you want to claim somebody. But in all of the other senses where you have to kind of take responsibility or view them as a part of your culture, then all of a sudden it's like, nope, we are one homogenous race. We are one society.
Yeah,
And you
exactly.
find this in someone who's mixed race anyway, right? That despite the fact you were like born in Japan, your first language is Japanese. In fact, I think most of the time I've spoken to you has been in Japanese. It's rare that you'll even speak English socially, unless it's to someone that doesn't speak Japanese, right? Like Japanese is more
Yeah,
part of your identity in Japan than it is your English side of your identity.
it is.
Like obviously you've had Naomi Saka like experiences and you've shared them with Japanese people. What do they tend to say back to you?
And then some people are like, yeah, I feel you, but like at the same time, some people were like, what's wrong with, being proud of her as Japanese? Like you are being racist now. And I'm like, mm. Like, so some people, like, they don't know this like racism things are going on around us. So like they be like, no, like racism doesn't exist in Japan. And I'm like, ooh, like you're gonna say that? Okay, bye.
Yeah. Anytime that there's somebody saying something critical about Japan in any sense, there are all
Mhm.
of these Japanese people who are quick to say that is not a thing that happens, even though it's not about their personal experience whatsoever. Like they
Mhm.
don't have the window into the mixed race experience. They don't have the window into the
Yeah.
foreign experience. What I've noticed is that there tends to be a lot of overlap between the kind of Japanese person who loves to see foreigners speaking Japanese when they're saying good things about Japan, and
Yeah.
the kind of person who, the second they hear something negative, goes, well, get out of our country. If
Mm.
you don't like it, leave. It's the exact same person. Anytime I'm on Twitter going, I love Japanese food or something like that, they're like, yes, this is great. And then they start scrolling down to some of my other tweets and they go, wait, no. Did not mean to like you before I realized you had some opinions that I did not agree with.
Yeah.
Sophie, do you have any opinions that you're comfortable to say to your English-speaking circle of friends, but not your Japanese-speaking following?
And then actually, I'm really not afraid to say same things to like English speakers and Japanese speakers. That's why I don't have Japanese friends because they're because they're scared to be judged by me because I always make comments about like how shallow and like lame Japanese people can be, and then I always say that out loud that they are kind of scared to be judged now.
Yeah.
So speaking of Twitter and your online presence, Sophie, I noticed you tweeting something, retweeting around the ideas of the word feminism coming to Japan.
Oh, yeah. So actually there is this like hashtag coup2 thing going on. And then
Yeah.
like since then like those like feminism like activists like, are trying their best to make a change in Japan. And then like this guy who is called Hiroyuki,
Mhm.
who actually established Nichan. I think
Oh,
it's
yeah,
called
yeah,
Gochan now. Yeah, it's
yeah.
like Reddit, the Japanese version of Reddit, and then he
Everybody listening to this podcast knows what Nichan is. I mean, all of the
okay,
Bryans
cool.
are familiar with Nichan.
Okay. So yeah, this guy had an interview with HuffPost talking about feminism, and he said like, "Oh, I know how easy it is to be a housewife because I saw my mom traveling around, blah blah blah." And then like those comments he made in the interview is triggering like all the Japanese women, not all the Japanese women, like some of Japanese women on the internet. And their perspective, being housewife, raising a kid is not a easy job. And like he said it, I know it's easy to raise a kid and be a housewife. So like that's why like women are triggered and everything. But I thought like he thinks this way, like he treat women this way. Like we are happy to know that. So
Right,
like,
right.
you know,
Yeah,
I just
he did everybody a favor by kind of like outing himself, and you can go, well, that's
yeah.
what he thinks, so now we don't have to be involved with him anymore.
Yeah,
It
like
reminds me of that viral tweet from last year where some academics decided to put on a conference about feminism, and it was like the picture was 12 men
Yeah.
putting on the conference.
oh,
It's like that's all we needed to know. The conference now doesn't need to happen.
I've noticed in like any online Twitter debate recently, in the Japanese Twitter sphere, I've noticed that in the comments, there are a handful of people who are echoing exactly what Sophie's saying. There's somebody who always writes, I see these things on Twitter blow up, and I never understand how people don't read them and just stop at, oh, here's a person who thinks this way. Cool for them. I'm going to go about my day. I've been seeing a lot of those comments recently. And then the other thing is like this idea of, I think people get mad about it because it is a very typical male knee-jerk reaction to a feminist movement, or the word feminism, or the idea of feminism, to go, well, actually men have it worse and women have it easy, which most women feel is not the reality. And anytime you see these conversations, you see all these Japanese men pop up in the conversation and go, there's all this talk about how women are discriminated against, but actually it's the men who are discriminated against, and actually all this talk of danjo fubyodo. But it's
that means gender equality, right?
Gender inequality.
Yeah, right. Okay, sorry, but the point of that word is like danjo is the word for man and woman, right? Which is like the word for gender. And I think like what people in the West think is wrong about feminism is that it's like talking about the women. Right, like
they want to elevate the women and make them.
Yeah, I'm not for feminism, but I am for gender equality. And it's like, well,
so are feminists.
Exactly.
Exactly. That's the whole point I'm saying. It's like you already have like different, perspective on feminism. That's what I'm talking about. I think that's all right to be like that. It's nonsense to just like go for like each other, like like you're wrong, fight me, like that's that's a no-go.
And actually, I remember when I was first here in Japan, and I don't remember why, but the subject of women's rights came up. And I remember a long, long time ago asking, like, how do you discuss
Wasn't it the court case, Bobby?
Rights? What's that?
Wasn't it the court case?
So this is a bit now. This is you trying to do a bit, right? It's really hard to tell. It just says random things.
Because you said, I don't know why, but the subject of women's rights came up. It's like, it sounds to me like you said something objectionable, and everyone around the dinner table was like, right, Bobby, let me talk to you about women's rights.
And you think that has something to do with a court case?
Yeah. Okay, I don't think that, Bobby. What I'm doing is using a comedic exaggeration.
Well done.
Thanks, ma'am.
But anyway, I wanted to use the word women's rights in the conversation, and I said, what's the Japanese for that? And someone said, well, I guess you could say Joshi no Jinken Undo. Joshi is women, and Jinken is human rights, and Undo is a movement. So like the female women's rights, the female human rights movement. But they said that's not something that really is a term in Japanese, and it's not something that we really talk about a lot. And that might just be like where I was in Japan and the environment that I was in Japan. But I did get the impression that like feminism or the idea of women's rights were not as openly discussed, and there wasn't the same kind of dialogue around it for the average Japanese person as there is in the West.
Yeah.
Like a lot of what we would consider problematic ideas around gender and around what a woman's role is stuff that's very, very just normal and average to Japanese society at large.
Chalk and cheese. It's like you can tweet about going, are some kanji problematic because they might imply that a woman's place is in the home? Whereas you go to actual Japanese society.
I have done that.
There we go. But you go to actual Japanese society and you have a police officer saying, in what respect was she sexually harassed? It seems to me like only her arse was slapped. So like that, there is a long way to go. That, by the way, Sophie, is verbatim from an actual police officer.
What?
So should we look at the mail, because it's very germane to what we're talking about?
Yeah.
We do have mail this week. It is from, believe it or not, Brian in Fukuoka. Hey,
I've
Brian.
heard of him.
Brian.
Yeah. Right on topic, Brian. He says, so excited to have you back. What have I learned from the first couple of episodes of season 2? No one supports women and native cultures in Japan like you two white guys. Keep doing the Lord's work. I take offense at that, because I don't think it's really fair to say that we are two white guys. We're not just two white guys who support women and native cultures in Japan. We're two white guys who support women and native cultures the world over.
Also, we have an actual woman on our podcast, so
representation at work.
Shall we talk about the news?
Let's.
Bobby, lots of things going on. What, in our view, is the most important thing happening this week?
The most important thing this week, and maybe ever, the movie Parasite, the South Korean film, swept the Oscars, won Best Director, Best Picture, Best Original Screenplay, as well as a number of others even. It started this debate that between two people I follow on Twitter, Hiroko Tabuchi, who writes for the New York Times, and Matt Alt, who's written a bunch of Western market-facing English language books about Japan and Japan cultural things. Like he wrote the Yokai Attack, like stories of ninjas and stuff. So kind of Japan subculture stuff. But Hiroko Tabuchi posed the question, does this mean that K-pop, K-beauty, and Korean movies with these cultural juggernauts like Parasite are starting to eclipse Japan's soft power? And Matt kind of came back and said, I think that's really interesting. It was a well-deserved win, and K-pop definitely does better than J-pop. But does that mean that Korea is poised to overtake Japan as a tastemaker? And his idea is that Japan's soft power isn't really built on hits. It's more about the idea of Japan. What do you guys think?
The only way that I heard about the Parasite win was because an interviewer interviewed that gentleman on the red carpet and asked him the question, what made you decide to do the film in Korean?
A number of interviewers did. At least two interviewers are on tape. And that doesn't count the interviewer who asks him, like, what do you think is the best thing about being famous in America? And all of them were like, what?
Oh, God.
Yeah, so soft power is all about cultural, as opposed to like military power, financial power, economic power. Soft power is more the ideas around the country that make it attractive to tourists and marketable, and that bring in money through cultural.
It's just about sentiment, really. It's about when you think of that country, what does it make you feel? And soft power can be generated, but it's really, really hard to, because it needs multiple thousands of touch points in order to be generated. And arguably, I think Britain probably is losing its soft power. Like what really exists that's British around the world? You know, the legacy of the Beatles, the odd, I don't know, Irish pub, which somehow Britain still gets some kind of credit for. There's not really a lot left.
Harry Potter themed amusement parks?
That's true, yeah. Although, was Harry Potter British, or is he a fictional character? Have a think about that, Bobby. But I think the reason why Japan has so much soft power is partly because of its huge economic influence in the 80s. Right, that is to say that it was basically this kind of one, dare I say, and I hate to use this word, exotic influence in the global markets. Right, it was a market which was culturally very, very different to the other markets which were interacting, and it was supplying these new exotic products like mini displayers and tape recorders. In addition to that, there was, and of course, this is kind of pre-manga, pre-anime, right, pre-Japanese pulp culture. And then, of course, you have Japanese restaurants. And I certainly have this feeling that like more and more people in the UK are aware of what Korea is. Now people know about, say, Korean fried chicken. There's now Korean fried chicken pop-up stores. And I've not seen a single karaage shop in London, but there's like multiple Korean fried chicken shops. People know about Korean barbecues. That's now a thing. And of course, the kind of the stream of consciousness for Korean music started with Gangnam Style, right? That was basically the first time that a song which was sung entirely in Korean reached number one in the UK charts. And so I think certainly in the last 5 years, there has been a huge spike in interest for Korea, and there hasn't been anything from Japan to compensate for that. So I wouldn't say that Japan is diminishing so much as there's new exciting things coming from other places, and Japan doesn't have anything new to offer.
Sophie, what do you think?
Bobby, she's already actually appeared on the podcast, so
yeah, I was going to ask, do people?
We've hit the checkbox.
Are people in England aware that there are two other people on this podcast, or is it just the Ollie show again?
That's funny. No, it is funny.
All right, so Ollie had his 5 minutes. Sophie, do you have opinions that you'd like to share?
Okay, so here's my 5 minutes.
Funny.
I actually
it's funny because I'm in on the joke. That's why it's funny. I love it as well. You know.
I agree with Ollie. Actually,
that'll do. I agree with Ollie. That's all we need.
Hey, let me talk. So,
thank you, Sophie.
It's kind of surprising that someone said Korea is starting to, be Japanese culture, blah blah blah. Like starting, like when
Yeah.
are what? Like that happened like years ago. Like what are you talking about? Like K-pop was like big in Japan too. Like starting from I don't know, Big Bang, Kara, Girls' Generation, blah blah blah, and then like they all went to the States, and then like it was already big. Like right now they got 21, BTS, everything. But what Japan got nothing like that. Like Korea,
Yeah.
like K-pop, like Korean culture is big and like everywhere in the world, but like we got nothing. So like it's kind of surprising that she used the word started, you
Yeah,
know?
starting to eclipse. It's been a long,
Yeah.
long, long running process.
Yeah, exactly.
I think there's two interesting things about it. One is that some people are saying that a lot of the ikioi, a lot of the momentum behind like this
Hmm.
Korean pop culture, Korean soft power building in other countries is because there are more second and third generation Korean citizens of those countries. There's a huge Korean American population in the US that's much
Hmm.
bigger than the Japanese American population. So you've got like kids in high school who are going to show their friends this, or people who are going to tune in when a Korean band performs on Saturday Night Live. And the other thing, and don't bite my head off here, Ollie, but the other thing that I think is a big factor is that the content that Korea is producing in terms of the movies and the music is objectively good, while the content that Japan is producing is objectively bad.
Exactly.
And I don't
Yes.
want to
Okay.
say, I mean, when I say that, I mean that there is not as much value in Japanese pop culture placed on somebody being good at something. And it's a legit problem in the music industry where the idols and the bands, they dress them up cute, but like they're not supposed to be great singers. They're not supposed to be great dancers.
And actually, some of them are cast with kind of looking for imperfections in that they don't want them to have, say, perfect teeth or like a perfect teeth sounds like we're buying a horse. But I remember reading an article about how the J-pop idol group system is set up such that they bring them in kind of age 14, 15, and they want the male fans to feel some kind of guardianship over their growth.
Well, it goes
It's
both
perverted
ways
and
because the
weird.
male idol groups are the same. They're supposed to be kind of like these girl and boy next door, cute, very young, accessible figures that you can feel like either a parent or an older brother and you're watching them grow up kind of thing. But
It's gross either way.
it's gross and the quality is low. The quality is not good. So when you take this specific cultural appeal to like you watch somebody doing not great choreography, singing an off-key song, and culturally you go, "Oh, I respond to that. I want to root for them." That doesn't translate when you take it overseas. And Ollie, you said that there's no like equivalent to like kind of these big K-pop performances that get attention overseas. The only Japanese one I could think of was the Baby Metal performance on Stephen Colbert's Late Night, like 4 or 5 years ago now.
Mhm.
And I think
Right.
one of the reasons that got so much attention was because the metal band who plays for them is an amazing metal band. It's about
Yeah.
quality.
So Bobby's thesis is that Japan doesn't turn out perfect hits, but Pen Pineapple Apple Pen is perfect.
Not what I said in any sense.
Yeah, so basically, those, what was it? So those like AKB, like Johnny's, those idols, like as you guys said, like they're imperfect. Like their performance and their singing is bad
It's bad.
compared
It's supposed to
to
be
like
bad.
K-pop artists. And but I think it's weird, but I think that's why they can make more money, in Japan because people think like people I don't know why. Like people don't want superstar in Japan. Like they just
Mhm.
want like, boy next door, like girl next door kind of people. And then like they want to, 応援したくなる for those
Mm.
Yeah, they want
girls
to
and
root
boys
for them.
and
They
then
want
like
Well,
to
pay
encourage them.
money
Yeah.
and things. Yeah. So I really don't like that, but I don't really know. I feel like they're missing out real talents, like a lot of real talents because they're focusing too much on these,
Yeah.
like normal people.
Originality
and what
gets lost. Originality
Yeah.
gets lost, and then like that star
I,
quality tends to get lost too.
Mm.
one thing that I think is quite good about Japan is that people are prepared to spend money on live entertainment, right? People do like throw $50 on a concert, without too much thought. And there are live music venues which do, support artists who do make a living playing music. And I think that's something which Japan should be applauded for. And there's kind of this point, why would somebody want to go down this route where they make one small mistake in their private life, and then 6 months later they're on national TV shaving their head off, crying and apologizing for having not separated their plastic from their burnable trash, or whatever the indiscretion was.
Quick fact check: they're often required to shave their hair off, not their head off. If they shave their head off, that would be a much bigger thing. Let me jump in real quick. I want to ask what you guys think about Matt Alt's thesis here, that Japan as a global tastemaker is more about the idea of Japan culturally and not the hits that it produces, not so much the pop culture.
Yeah, like animes and things, right? Like, I don't really think like no other country can beat Japan in anime industry, because or comic or whatever, like Shukan Shonen Jump or whatever, like that, the same thing where the higher level of those products won't be like appearing in other regions or whatever. I am so confident about that.
It reminds me a bit of Dave Gutteridge's cartoon. So Dave Gutteridge is a stand-up comedian, or maybe former stand-up comedian. I'm not sure these days.
It's hard to keep track.
He did a comic, Sophie, where it's a comic with only two squares. The first square is a one white guy saying to another white guy, "Wow, dude, you live in Japan." And then above his head is a bubble with like Pikachu and a sushi restaurant called Hello Sushi, which looks like Hello Kitty, and the Great Wave and like manga and some sumo wrestlers, and it all looks really cool. And then the guy that responds to him to the question, "Wow, you live in Japan," he just says, "Yep." And what he's imagining is like drinking outside of a 7-Eleven and like a packed train. And so like the point of Dave's cartoon went viral because it's basically this idea, right? They're like the idea of Japan.
Like every time I go abroad, and then like when I say like, "Oh, I'm from Japan," they be like, "Oh my gosh, you're from Japan? I'm from Tokyo. Tokyo is really awesome. I really want to go there sometime." Like, yeah, like you should go, I guess, like once in your life, but it's not a place you want to live. Like maybe you can party there, like you don't want to live there. Like, they have like this whole like imagination for Japan. Like it's really, everything is high tech, and then like I don't know, like spaceship is going around. I don't know what they're guessing, but
I might be looking at this in a slightly different way, but I think I don't want to read too much into what somebody else is saying. But the thing that I took away from it is the idea that it's more of kind of like a traditional idea, the Western kind of Orientalist idea of a traditional Japan that is the staying power behind Japan's soft power. Things like Zen Buddhism or Japanese food or sushi or things that kind of like predate pop culture. And one of the things that I think a lot of people tend to point out as a misstep around the whole Cool Japan project was that they misidentified what foreigners think was cool. And yeah,
100%.
Japan manga, anime, amazing, great. Like I have a lot of respect for that as a work of art. But when they selected out, like robots and idol groups and anime as what represents cool Japan, I think they missed the fact that a lot of what foreigners identify, a lot of what non-Japanese people identify as cool about Japan is more traditional, more historical food culture, religion, anything that we look at as mysterious.
Yeah, like how do those toilets spray your bum so well? A lot of the books about Japan that become very popular, bestsellers abroad, are kind of ideas of historical, traditional Japanese ways of doing things that technology hasn't solved. So like how to keep your house in order is a really good example, right?
Yeah.
Or how to manage your finances, right? You don't need an app. You just need to use a notebook the old traditional Japanese way. And all these books do is say like the same old guff which people have said for centuries, and kind of rebrand it through the Japanese lens, give it some Japanese name that's transliterated into Roman characters, and it's a big seller. And what's really funny is none of these practices are employed by Japanese people, right? Like Japanese homes are comfortably the messiest homes, the most cluttered homes in the entire world, right? Managing finances, like the amount of personal debt in Japan in the under 30s is like higher than most other different developed countries. People are not good at managing their finances, and every store wants to give them credit. It's like all of these books are kind of appealing to what Japan could be if it never modernized. Sophie, do you think there's any secrets that young people have about how to live a good life in Japan that could actually be made into a book abroad? Like, is there actually anything young Japanese people do which does mean that they have a better quality of life than foreign counterparts?
So I guess if we're talking about, what kind of message can the three of us offer for young Japanese people to make their lives better, and forgive me if I'm overstepping, but I think what we're all trying to say, this is our message. Sophie, Ollie, Born, myself, Bobby Judo, our message to Japan is be more like Korea.
Okay, thanks very much for listening this week. Obviously, what Bobby said there was a joke. The real way to find actual happiness is to follow me on Instagram. My Instagram is Ollie Hornpics, OLLIEHORNPICS. Bobby, where can they find you?
Search Bobby Judo. There's all kinds of stuff. Some of it good. Sophie, your Twitter is very interesting. You want to shout out your Twitter?
Yeah, sure. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. My account is Sophie_Hardison, PHIE_HARDSON. No, HARDISON.
And as always, you can find our message box, japanbyrivercruise.com. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you guys next week.